Hello, everybody. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us for the second episode of Pillars in Performance. I hope you had a nice St. Patrick's Day weekend. My name is Owen. I'm the account manager here on the UK team, and I'm also audience specialist on the team as well.
So hi everyone, my name is Tim. I'm an account manager as well on the UK team, and similar to Owen, a product expert on audience.
Very good. So we've a lot to get through today. This is mainly going to be focused on search audience strategies. So all the great stuff to help you optimize your current search strategy for your campaigns. We hope you've tuned in and be very engaged with questions. We have a live ticker running on the right-hand side of the live stream that we will be taking questions throughout. So at any point, if you have any questions for us, type it in and we'll have a few pauses throughout the live stream where we'll take questions and answer some of your queries that you guys have. So to go through the running order of today, we have understanding the importance of a search audience strategy. So why put the time and effort into knowing just the audience on search and segmenting it as much as we can, of why that will benefit your current search campaigns. Then how to identify those best performing audiences on your website at the moment. So how to pick out the returning customers that are most valuable, those users or the portion of traffic that converts the best, how to identify that and capitalize on it. Then encompass that all together and how can we just set up a best-in-class search audience strategy. So similar to what you'd be talking with your account managers, we'll run through the must-haves on your search campaigns for the next to get implemented straight away. And then finally, how to optimize all this. So every 4 or 5 weeks, how do we sort of build on the learnings of our search campaigns, tweak the lists and make it perform even better. So a lot to get through today. And like I said, any questions through along the way, just pop it in the live chat and we'll try to get back to you. Cool. So anybody who is running search campaigns or even display campaigns will know that, just bidding on keywords, it can also be just very hard to find the right customers or get that customer to convert. So there's a lot of time spent refining your keywords, exact match, phrase match, broad match, modifier, just trying to do anything to try to get the CPA down and get it to perform as well as we can. But there's a really nice way to look at your search campaigns. It's not just so much about the devices and the locations and the keywords that we're using. It's actually just trying to identify the user who is searching and what are their behaviors. If that user is more likely to convert, then it makes sense to bid on that user, not necessarily focusing on refining the keyword all the time. So it's a little bit of trying to move away from the idea of sort of context based, so based on the keyword, and more user based, so based on what that user has been searching for the last couple of days, what is their intent to purchase, and that's what we're really going to run through today. So a reason of why this is important to look at, again, like no matter what business or campaign you're running at, very rarely are you going to have every single conversion happen in the first day. I think we've had numerous conversations where everybody believes that it's a one-day purchase. When we dive into the analytics and dive into the account, there's always that lag. On average, in the UK, 72% of shoppers will abandon their basket. So that's a 72% drop-off rate at the crucial moment in time. So we have to have a strategy. If that's a re-engagement or an audience strategy, it's so important. And then as a benchmark for the UK, again, somebody visits the site between 2 and 4 times before converting. So again, all the more important to have a sound audience strategy to make sure that we're not just losing traffic that is going to convert by not being present again. So again, just drive more sales by closing the loop a little bit by having a fully fledged audience strategy for your search campaigns. So I was talking to Tim about this earlier. I'm very proud of this analogy, but this is how we look at the traditional search campaigns today versus what they've previously been like. So if you look at traditional search campaigns on the left, if you imagine you have your business, you have your store at the end of the road, and there's a traffic jam of cars leading up to your store, you're only allowed to leave in a certain amount of passengers and customers every day. Once your shop shuts, all those cars have to turn around and drive home. Today's search campaigns are a lot more sophisticated. Think of it as like a super highway. You have all these different lanes, these fast lanes, all of 6 lanes of traffic that you can divert your customers in lots of different ways in order to get them to your store as quick as you can. So somebody who's a returning user and you know that purchases frequently, put them in the fast lane, make sure they get to your store by the end of the day. Again, if you identify a certain signal that somebody's more likely to convert, put them in another lane, get them to your store. So it's not a linear search campaign anymore where you have a set budget. Once that budget is over, no traffic gets in. With a search audience strategy, the whole thing is that we make sure that we're prioritizing customers and users based on their behavior that are going to convert, getting them to your campaign before your budget runs dry for the end of the day. So this is what we'll be covering today. It's a very well-known sort of strategy when we look at audience. Some of you might have heard it before, but it starts with just identifying your audience. So just knowing where to look in the account, in your analytics, to know if it's valuable for me to bid on returning users, if it's valuable for me to look at other audiences within my campaign to target. So we'll be looking at 1 or 2 reports that can help you actually find that within the account. Re-engagement is so important. We just looked at the stats there that over 70% of people will drop off after adding something to a basket. So having a re-engagement strategy is vital, and Tim's going to be guiding you guys through that. Expanding. So we talked a lot about re-engagement in some past live streams that we've did, but expanding your reach to new audiences using things like similar audiences for search is very important as well. So again, identifying other signals, other audiences within your search campaigns that we can capitalize on, not just for re-engagement, but to acquire new prospects who are more likely to convert based on their signals. So there's a lot to get through today, and hopefully by the end of it, we'll have a fully fledged audience strategy, what you can go away with, the 3 things you need to know to set up in the account. So looking at the identify bracket first, if this might be new news to most of you, but it's still very important to look at. It's looking in your AdWords account, looking in your analytics account, and understanding the data, understanding who's coming through my search campaigns, and who's more valuable for me to prioritize and bid up on. So one of the things that you can look at straight away in the analytics is the new versus returning user report. This is, if you're thinking about any type of re-engagement strategy, want to know, okay, how can I, let's say, bring the CPA of my account down, increase the average basket value of my campaign, and just make sure that I'm focusing my budget and my time on people who are more likely to convert, then returning users are usually the first place to look. In the new versus returning report inside an analytics, you can see the breakdown between new and returning users, and that should be the first signal to tell you I need to have some form of re-engagement strategy on my search campaigns. From this report, you can clearly see under transactions, returning users will make up the majority of the actual transactions because of that drop-off period and people making 2 to 4 visits to a website before converting. All of the other stats look in the green for returning users as well. So the e-commerce conversion rate is higher, the revenue is higher, people spend more time on the page, visit more pages. So you can see it does make sense. This mightn't be news to you, but for people who haven't realized that, we could spend a lot more time making sure that we're getting back those drop-offs of returning users, because it will increase the healthiness of the campaign. To give you an example, if you have, let's say, a set budget for the day and you have only, let's say, 60% impression share on that search campaign, that's 60% impression share as well from returning users. So it does make sense to have 100% impression share showing 100% of the time to returning users before showing to everybody. So we'll be diving more into this, and Tim will be taking you through how we can set up a good re-engagement strategy for your search campaigns, but I hope that makes sense. The second report is really, really insightful. It's something that you can look at inside in the AdWords front end. So inside in the AdWords interface, you can go into the audience dashboard inside at the top right of the account and click on Audience Insights on any one of your remarketing lists that you have had set up in the account. looking in there will actually break down that audience and tell you what that audience is searching for. So everybody that's on your site, what kind of behaviors do they have? What's their age? What's their gender? What are they interested in? And are we taking any action on these in the account? One thing to note here is that when you click into the list straight away, you can see your demographics. So you might have a list of people who've converted on a site before. You can click into that list and just see what makes those users tick. So for a converters list, you can see what demographic is more likely to convert. So what age are they? What are they male or female? Are they a parent? Are they not a parent? This gives you a lot of ammo to go into your search campaigns and make changes straight away. What those are, I'll tell you straight after this. But the next one to look at is the interests. So if you're doing anything in relation to display advertising as well, you can see what audiences make up this converters list. So for this particular example, we know that people who are searching on this website are interested in a trip to the Canary Islands, trips to the Caribbean, and you can see there to the right just how much more likely they are than the rest of the UK. So you can see there for trips to the Canary Islands, the users are 13.4 times more likely to be interested in that than the rest of the UK. So you can see it's pretty, it's pretty sort of stark. Pretty stark data to say that this person is more likely to convert on my site than somebody else. This type of information can really help you with search and display campaigns. I want to focus on the demographics because this is the one thing that we can actually change straight away in the account. Before even looking at a re-engagement or expand strategy, this is the one thing that people do sort of glance over sometimes and don't spend enough time on, because I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but you can have complete influence over your demographic targeting within your search campaigns. People think that it's just for display and video, but on your search campaigns, if you know that a particular age group converts really well, or you actually don't even sell to an age group, let's say 18 to 24 is for any particular reason, you can exclude them, bid down on them, bid up on them, just to make sure from the word go in your search campaigns that it's as profitable as it can be. So to give you an insight of what's available within demographic targeting within AdWords, so you have sort of full visual reporting of who's more likely to convert in terms of age and gender at an account and campaign level, and you get a complete campaign summary view to see which campaigns are performing the best with audiences. As well, inside in the new reports dashboard in AdWords, you can also get custom reports on age and gender and all demographics targeting within search campaigns. So the action from this is, if there is any ages or let's say gender that you know performs better, you can actually put positive or negative bid adjustments on those straight away, just to make sure you're not missing out on any relevant traffic. It all comes back to the example on the returning users. If you only have 60% impression share on this audience, you want to make sure you're targeting it where you know it will perform, and demographics is the first place to start. I'm just going to click back and see if any questions at the moment. If not, we will move on. Everybody's very quiet this morning. No worries. Okay, what is up next? So next, I'll hand it over to Tim, who's going to give you through on the re-engagement strategy.
So just following on Owen's point, what's really interesting there is, yes, we have all these ways of identifying. Now it's how do we do it, and how do we take that action, and why do we do it as well. The point here is to serve your existing audiences with the most powerful message in the moment that matters. So when we're talking specifically in regards to remarketing or through audience strategy, as we like to put it, is looking at the matter at the moment that is going to count, and that in the end is going to put money in your back pocket. So when we're looking at remarketing for search ads, which is probably one of the most kind of powerful ways that we can re-engage with your visitors, we want to look at a couple of key things. First, returning users convert twice as much as the site average. And through our LSA, we can really optimize bids on specific keywords for visitors on your remarketing list. If you know that, for example, someone has been on a particular page on the website, and you know that these people tend to convert much more because your analytics say so, you should definitely be taking advantage of that and maximizing what you can get out of it, and having some impact on that. And with our LSA, because we're talking here about mainly search, most importantly search, we also have the power of intent. And when somebody is looking for you a second time, or is looking for a specific set of keywords a second time, we know that that intent is going to be much stronger at that moment. So we want to be the best position we can be to get that people to come through. I like to think about it, if we're running a 100-meter race, our customers at the 80-meter line, how do we get them to cross that finish line and make that push for the last 20 meters? So how does RLSA work? Most of you might be familiar with how RLSA works. However, let's just go over some of the fundamentals just to make sure that we get things nice and clear. So the first step is, obviously, when a visitor comes to the website, they get added to your user list. This goes through kind of the cookies on your website, and basically very, very simple setup. They get added to your list. If they go on multiple parts of the website and you have multiple lists, they'll then be getting added to multiple lists. What then happens is that the visitor will leave the website. He will then maybe browse around, maybe, go on other websites, or simply, take his time to reflect on, if he wants to make that purchase decision. When he is potentially ready to that, he will search on Google for one of your keywords. And the RLSA at that moment would kick in and allow you to adjust your bid or if we can say, add text for that user list. This is with the intent of, once again, delivering a more powerful message and a more relatable message, and one that will have bigger influence on the capacity of the user to potentially make a purchase, or send in a lead or an inquiry, make a phone call, whatever a conversion means to you. So yeah.
I think one of the common questions on that as well is, if you are going to do remarketing for search, a lot of people will say, well, people are just going to come back to my site anyway, or I'm just going to show up anyway. And I think that's something that we've got a lot inside here, and on paper it makes complete sense. But I think, again, you have to look at it from what Tim said there. It's about moving up in positions as well. This number one sort of impression share, what I mentioned first, and then looking at position. So there's not a guarantee that you will show up the next time that users search. So it's just so important that 100% of the time when that user comes back, that we are present. As well, because it's so competitive, if we were, let's say, in position 3 or position 4, and then somebody did another search again, and we're still, let's say, down, we just missed out on number 3 and number 4, and we're at the bottom of the page, that's a user potentially lost as well. So it's just so important that, like Tim said, if they're nearly over the line, just make sure you have a strong presence for that second or third search, so you are close to the top of the page, so they are going to come back and finish off the purchase with yourself.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, in an ideal world, and we're very well placed to be able to talk about this, but a user would come to your website the first time through paid traffic, and then come back through organic traffic. However, in a world where we have so much information on a daily basis, and we're going through so much content, that these are things that we can tend to forget about. And taking the example of a loan company, sometimes these companies will have very kind of similarly or related terms in their brand names. And the last thing we want to do is for you to kind of convince a user of a sale, and then have that returning user go back to one of your competitors' website because they're putting themselves in a good position on a particular set of keywords, whereas you have that information that person has already been on your website. It should be your click, and that's what we want to achieve. And so, looking at this slide, it's kind of summarizes what we just talked about, and just through kind of some figures. where RLSA allows you to really bid efficiently for the top positions for returning website visitors. And here, the example of the mobile is even more applicable. We're now looking at mobile more than we ever have. And, I actually recently looked at, an app where it shows me how many times I look at my mobile phone in a day, and I was completely astonished. And it's true that it is our first point of contact for almost everything.
How many times do you look at your phone a day?
Over 150. So it's not a number I'm proud of, but it is a fact. So why is this important? Is that on mobile, 84% of mobile clicks happen in the first position. So on such a small device, occupying that forefront and the top of the page on search is going to be very, very important. And what we can say, and this kind of goes back to the beginning of what Owen was saying, is that 96% of website visitors leave a site without converting. And, putting yourself in your customer's shoes, it's true that they have this access to information where they should be able to look around and, not have that pressure to convert straight away. We just want to make sure that when they do come back, that we're there kind of with open arms, ready to greet them. And then kind of looking back, twice as much more often returning site visitors convert compared to new site visitors. That's a number that can't be stressed enough. And in a sense, the simple way of interpreting that number would be like we should be giving twice as much attention to returning visitors as we should be to new visitors.
Yeah, and on that as well, why mobile is so important. I think on analytics now, if you're remarketing through analytics, it is an element of cross-device remarketing as well. So it's all the more important if somebody is researching on a mobile and they visit your site, if they come back on desktop, if we're able to identify that's the same user, then we could be more present there, which is amazing. It's something we couldn't do before this time last year.
So moving on, what we've seen from our side and, why we are very enthusiastic and why we definitely want to share this information with you is because we see that it works. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, RLSA is probably the most performant tool that is out there for our advertisers and that everyone should be taking advantage of. And when I hear queries from advertisers saying that they have trouble with their target CPA and they're not achieving the results that they want, something that would be essential for me is looking at having a clear audience strategy. In terms of the numbers that we've seen, minus 44%, and that's one to remember, is the average CPA decrease for conversions from an RLSA user list versus an entire campaign. Especially with the new AdWords interface, we can definitely see all these figures well combined in your audiences tab. So you can definitely compare the impact that audience is having versus the rest of the search campaigns in this case. And then plus 10% is the average increase in conversions for advertisers that use RLSAs versus advertisers that do not use RLSA. And essentially, those plus 10% can be attributed to the fact that those advertisers who do use RLSA are really putting in that effort to pay attention to their returning users and really, show them that support and that kind of love, if we can say, to make them come back. So, how do we get started? It's very simple, and it's not that lengthy of a process, and it is one that would that definitely pays in the long term. The first is introducing a basic RLSA strategy, which is to target all website visitors through an all visitors list that you can either create directly on AdWords or through analytics, which is personally my preferred method. In order to really target everyone who's coming onto the website, just to have that data. Then what we do is we apply that all visitors list to all search campaigns as bid only. You can start by putting a bid that you're comfortable with, that you think will have enough impact to make that difference, or you can be a bit more conservative and just wait to gather that data before you make any decision. Same again, seasonality, timing, all these can be taken into account when making those decisions. So you can put that bid modifier to bid at least 40% to start bidding to value, which is kind of the recommended bid we would suggest in order for it to have that impact straight off the bat, and you're able to see those results. The next step is to thinking about having an advanced RLSA strategy, which is to add segmented RLSA lists based on the conversion funnel. So if you're an e-commerce business, that funnel is going to be different to a lead generation business, and every archetype of business definitely is unique, and dev list can be created in function to that. And then the final step would use the target and bid option to add new keywords specifically for those people who are on those lists, to extend that reach, and to really make sure that we're really focusing on the people that matter. So a question that we get a lot and we thought would be interesting to share with you is, how do I know how much traffic to expect if I increase bids? Using the campaign simulator, we can model bid increases and therefore potentially see the number of impressions that we'd be getting. So this is going to be a good one in terms of budget implications for you as well, and seeing the number of impressions, and then based on the conversion data that you've seen, you can then really plan on it and potentially evaluate the efficiency of it down the line.
Yeah, I think that was probably the second most common question we get for remarketing for search is, how do we measure the incrementality of those conversions, of the performance? And this just tells you that, with a bid of 100%, you could expect this many more clicks, this many more impressions, and potentially this amount more of conversions, which is always great to know.
And I think that if we're looking at this specific slide, and when we see the impressions column and the top impressions column, that one is the one that I would probably pay a lot of attention to, because as we just showed with the example of mobile, top impressions are very, very important, because they're putting you in the best situation to get that conversion. Moving on to expanding. So once we have let's say, proof of concept and something that works, how do we take advantage of that, and how we use that to add another arrow to our bow, if that's the right expression? I think it's So then definitely look at expanding on that. So extending our reach to new qualified users who we've never connected with before, but we have all this precious data from. And for us, the main point here would be around similar audiences. And I think that similar audiences is a solution, product, however you want to call it, that is not being utilized to its fullest potential at the moment. Similar audiences essentially reaches users similar to your best performing audiences. They enable you to find new audiences who share characteristics with your website visitors. I always like to think of similar audiences as people who should be your customers, people who can be your customers, and people who we know share commonalities with people who have already been on your website, who are product viewers, who are basket abandoners, whichever lists you decide to set up. And so the benefits of the similar audiences can be put into 4 categories. First of all, the scalability of things. You can reach an audience that is on average 5 times greater than your remarketing list. So if you're looking at, potentially a seasonality push or a product launch or a promotion push, and these are things which will get your brand which will get you out there and really help you reach those most engaged users that have not been on your website yet. The simplicity aspect of things as well. These lists are automatically created and campaign can be completed in minutes. So that can be very, very easily done. All these lists are based on all the lists that you choose to create. And obviously, the more precise the list is going to be, the more narrow your audience is going to be, but then the more precise that you're going to be able to target these people. And you're looking at people who have a very high level of similarity on each list. Finally, in terms of looking at the how of things, we're looking at optimizing for near-term browsing behavior. So we're looking for all these signals that Google and AdWords in particular is able to pick up and really use to your advantage. And these lists have a capacity to regenerate very, very quickly as well. So there's zero latency on that, which is something that can't be stressed enough. And the performance aspect, finally, which is the one that people are probably the most interested in, is that layered with automated bidding, we can therefore see kind of, results straight off the bat, because we're going to be taking into account all those signals that smart bidding solutions will take into account. In a lot of situations, we would then see kind of improved remarketing performance, because all the signals and all the sales funnel is being taken into account. So in terms of implementing similar audiences for search, before handing it back to Owen, first, we want to just verify very quickly if Google Analytics or AdWords remarketing tags are implemented on our desktop and mobile websites. That's something that you can easily see with your IT teams, and definitely something that your account manager can help out with as well. We have a lot of teams that can help you and support any queries that you might have in regards to tags. The second step would be to identify the similar audiences lists that are available. Sometimes they're not. Here are the conditions where you will be able to see. So one, we need to have 1,000 active users. The membership status must be open and the seed list active. So the remarketing list that it's being created from needs to be active. Those would be the main two. Moving on is that we want to choose the right similar audiences for search list as well. We don't want to, put every list that's out there. There's definitely ones that are more applicable to others. If we're thinking of, for example, an e-commerce business, the one that comes to mind for me is similar to basket abandoners, for example. So we want to start with the search audience, the similar audiences for search, which are on the lower aspect of the funnel. Just the one that will probably, fuel some performance for you, and then choose the top 3 to 5 similar audiences lists. Typically all visitors lists don't perform as well, just because we're looking at much wider peer group. And then, down the line, we want to take that upper funnel similar audiences for search lists and apply them to DSA campaigns to increase the reach. So as we were talking in the example before, if we're in a prospecting phase or in an acquisition phase, and we really want to get our name out there. And then finally, we want to really use the reporting aspect of AdWords to analyze the results, and then being able to be in a situation where we can optimize bids accordingly based on all that performance. So obviously these steps might sound complicated, but the fact that these lists are essentially based off the remarketing list, it's a natural continuation of everything for you. So I'll just pass it back to Owen now.
Yeah. So again, just setting up for success with similar audiences. So we got a great introduction to what it was, but how can we really sort of drive it forward? And if you want to set up a similar audience for search strategy today, what must we know? So obviously to do this, we have to start with remarketing, or we at least have to have remarketing lists in the account. So as soon as you create your all visitors remarketing list, a similar audience will automatically be created off the back of that you can then use on your search campaigns as a similar to all users. Again, just define the list strategy. So as Tim mentioned, sort of the similar audience lists that are more targeted generally perform the best. So if you have a similar to converters or similar to purchasers that's active and available to use in the account, that's your first port of call, because it's going to be the best performing. You're looking at users who've typed in similar search terms or the same search terms as people who have previously converted on your website, which is really powerful. What you can also do is, if you're using auto bidding on the accounts, so if you're using things like Target CPA or Target ROAS, having a large list is actually a good thing as well, because you're giving a large list of extra users to basically the machine learning algorithm that's using smart bidding, and that's able to pick out the users who are similar, who are more likely to convert. So the top tip is, if you have the converters similar to converters list, make sure that's on. If you're also performing very well on auto bidding, make sure you apply the similar to all users, because that will work well as well. Following on from that, auto bidding is another key part of the similar audiences. So the more we're using auto bidding for search, the better these things will be performed. Because if you think about it, you're just giving that smart bidding tool an extra data point to feed off of. So you're saying, here's loads more audience data, have a look and see what ones are more likely to convert, bid up, bid down accordingly to who's more likely to purchase on the website. So it's really, it's really creative. The next thing is looking at testing ad creatives. We're not going to cover it in this presentation, but you can use if functions or ad customizers, which are really powerful. So you can actually tweak the creative depending on what audience is looking at it. So somebody who's similar to converters or similar to purchases, you can actually send them a different search creative or a different call to action if you want to test out the creatives. Similar for remarketing for search ads. Show them a returning user ad, something that's focused towards loyalty. If there's a discount you're offering coming back, you can also do that for remarketing for search. As well, looking at this, we should be measuring the full impact of these audience lists. So taking into account the view through conversions for similar audiences and remarketing as well. So at the end of the day, this is what ideally a fully fledged search audience strategy should look like. If you look at, I've stolen Eileen's slide from last week where she covered auto bidding and use it for our search audience strategy. So you can see at the center of at the core of our plan, we make sure our age and gender is spot on. You make sure you're bidding up, bidding down on the ages and genders that you know are more likely or less likely to convert. That's the no-brainer, first of all, when you come into the account. Second thing, you make sure that you are targeting your returning users in some shape or form. When somebody who's been on your site comes back, they're who you want to prioritize because they're more likely to convert. So making sure you have an all visitors list for remarketing for search, like people who've abandoned their basket, people who viewed the product. Customer match, something as well we haven't really dived into, but uploading your CRM data, so emails, lists of people who've previously converted, or you've had some sort of data capture with them that they are valuable, you can upload them back into AdWords as well. I know some businesses might value the converters, so you might have a lifetime value on those, and you want to make sure they're giving repeat purchases, because you can actually keep a list of people for up to 540 days. So, Tim talked about seasonality. If you're looking at Christmas time or Black Friday and you're a retailer, you make sure you're using that list this time next year to retarget coming up to Black Friday again by using a converters list from last year. So that's something you can do as well. So that's the second part of the circle. Then the final one to expand is your similar audiences. So this is your prospecting tool. This is going after extra reach, more search traffic with a higher intent to purchase. Some ways we can use this. So similar to converters, again, is a no-brainer. If we have it and it's working within the account, make sure that's applied to all campaigns. Similar to returning users as well. If you want to create a list of people who frequently purchase on the site, what do those users look like? How can I get more of them? Something that's really interesting that we've tried with a lot of clients inside here and it's worked really well is similar to high value lists. So if you're creating your lists within Google Analytics, you can actually create a remarketing list of, and I'm taking a retailer as an example here, but you can do this with any other business as long as you're tracking goals through analytics or e-commerce, is I want to create a list of people who have, let's say, who haven't had an average order value of over £2,000. So if I create a list of people who have, let's say, who haven't had an average order value of over £2,000. So if I create a audience list created automatically in my account of people who are similar to spending over 2,000. So the idea there is to get, let's say, your A customers, your A1 category customers, try to get more of high value customers on the site. And that's something that's a little bit down the line if you're just starting off with similar audiences. But if you feel that you are on top of this presentation so far, you feel like nothing's new, then the similar to high value or like A, B, and C category users is definitely something to try out in the account. It performs really, really well. By doing this, we see on average your decrease in CPA on remarketing for search ads. We saw their decrease by 44% across all verticals. No brainer increase by 10%. The same with similar audiences. Similar audiences the CPA should be a little bit higher than remarketing for search, but overall in the account, your similar to should convert better, have a higher CTR, and have a lesser CPA than your average search CPA. That's not taking into account any audience data. And as well, you should just really, by doing this, you're just hoping to get more high value customers, because returning users are more high value. Creating similar to users who've spent over a certain amount in the site is automatically attracting more revenue per booking or per purchase onto your site, which is great. So you can increase the profitability of the campaigns massively here. One thing that's really important is making sure that you're filling in the gaps. So I think for the majority of people who are on this live stream, you've probably dabbled with both, and I'm probably guessing you have more of a presence on remarketing for search than you currently do on similar audiences, but you might be testing both. The one key thing to remember here is to always look at how we're going to fill in the gaps. So I think with this, what you can do is in the new AdWords, you can actually just copy and paste these lists across the campaigns, just to make sure that you have full coverage over similar audiences and remarketing for search across the account. So in the AdWords tab, you can select the audience that you want to apply within the Audiences tab, click on Edit, Copy, and then that should have sort of saved that list to copy it. And what you can then do is go into the ad group section or the campaign section, wherever you're applying these lists. Click on, select all the campaigns or all the ad groups you want to paste across these audience lists to, and you can click Edit and then click Paste. And what that should do is you should see a little sort of notation come up like this saying paste one audience to 50 campaigns, and you should be able to keep the exact same bids and same settings on the existing list, and it should paste it all across the account. It's the easiest way just to make sure for your all visitors and similar to converters that you have this across every single search campaign or ad group in the account, just to make sure there's no gaps and you're getting the best performance out of your search campaigns that you possibly can. They've made it really easy. You can also do this for people who are familiar with AdWords Editor. It's also a very easy way to do that, and we won't go into that now, but through the front end, selecting the audience, copying it, selecting all the ad groups or campaigns, pasting it across, and that should make sure that you have a fully optimized search audience strategy that has no gaps in any of the campaigns or ad groups. So that sort of brings us towards the close. There's two sort of extra tips for search audience, which I've alluded to throughout the presentation, but I just want to reinforce now, is that if you're using any type of auto bidding, then that's a thumbs up for using any type of audience strategy, because using target CPA, using target ROAS, even using enhanced cost per click on the account will make sure that the auto bidding takes into account those audience lists and actually bids up and down based on that audience's likelihood to convert. So if you do have auto bidding on any of the campaigns, it's actually just as simple as applying the lists at 0%, for some no bid modifiers needed. So you don't need to actively manually bid up on those lists. The system will automatically take that into account and bid up and down if that user is likely to convert. So really powerful, and as well as just easier for you. So all you have to do is apply the lists, let enhanced cost per click or let the auto bidding do the rest of the work.
And if you're using auto bidding already, but you're not using an audience strategy, adding the audience strategy on top of auto bidding is going to reinforce the auto bidding. So you'll see more value from the auto bidding side of things, and vice versa. If you're already using an audience strategy, but you're not using an auto bidding strategy, you'll see more value from your audience strategy once the auto bidding is layered on top of it. So it's really a win-win when you have both.
And again, if you don't already know it or you are using DSA campaigns, similar audiences work really, really well with DSA. Because with DSA, or dynamic search ads, if you're not aware of them, they span a wide variety of keywords that you're not currently covering in your account. So it's content that's coming from your website, a lot of new terms coming in. So having to grab all that extra traffic out there can be a little bit daunting, because you don't know if it's going to convert as well. But tying it with a similar audience at least bans those new customers who are more likely to convert with the broader traffic. So it means that you're not just risking everything going for broader traffic and seeing what sticks. You're saying, okay, I want to open myself up to a wider set of keywords here, but I still want to just prioritize people who are more likely to convert. So again, if we're using dynamic search ads campaigns, twinning that with similar audiences will work even better. So moving on to sort of the next steps, sort of a now, next, later approach. Very sort of simple summary of what we looked at. So make sure any type of search audience, so we're talking about similar audience or remarketing for search, that we've applied all these audiences to all active search campaigns, just so we've full coverage. Apply the bids, that should say bids, not biz, to most of the targeted lists. If you're using auto bidding, again, no need to apply the lists. It'll already start working on its own. Next, what you can do, so leave that for like 2 weeks. What you can do then is review the list performance in the reporting tab inside in the new AdWords interface. So you can create a custom dashboard of audience performance, and you can see which lists are performing the best, which are getting the more conversions and less CPA. And as well, off the back of that, if you're using manual bidding, you can apply higher bids to the best performing lists. What we would suggest then in 3 to 4 weeks is for your account management team that you're talking to inside here in Google, set up a call, ask for sort of a consult on your audience strategy. There's some nice tools that we can do inside here to do a sort of a full sort of audit or gap analysis of your account to make sure that we can present you with any more opportunities that you might have with your search campaigns with search audiences. So loads to get on with, but I think there's loads of opportunities still left in your search campaigns. If you feel like you're hitting the ceiling in search, then look towards your audiences, because there's always more we can be doing to increase the impression share on people who are more likely to convert, while trying to reduce the CPA by just focusing on not giving any time to any irrelevant traffic. So that is it from us. I'll have a quick look again just to see if there's any questions. Oh, we do. Let's see. Okay, so we have 3 questions. I think that is Aditya. Hi, Aditya. So how high can the expected CPA for similar audience compared to RLSA if we were considering lower funnel lists? So on average, I think they do say that the CPA for similar audiences is about 20% higher than RLSA lists. But it should always be, if it's a list that's performing, then it should always be below the non-audience list for the search campaigns. So 20% higher than the returning user CPA, but it should always be lower than the average campaign CPA. If it's higher, then that means there's something wrong. We might be using the wrong list. We might be using the let's say a list that's too broad, so we might have to refine it to similar to converters. I think we have a few more. If we go back to it here. So again, and CPA of similar audience versus CPA of regular search campaigns without RLSA. Yeah, so I think I just answered that there as well. So it should, if it's a good performing similar audience list, it should always be lower than the average of the search campaign. If it's not, then we're doing something wrong. We have to take another approach to similar audiences or refine the lists. Is it possible to use only similar audience lists targeting in a DSA campaign? Yes, and that is a very good question. So I mentioned that it works really well with DSA. It can also work well if you actually tie it to the DSA campaign, just allowing similar audience traffic in. So Tim talked about sort of bid only as an option, or observation targeting in the new AdWords. But for what you can also do is target and bid. So only allow the similar audience traffic into the DSA campaign. So that means, again, you're just being more confident saying, I only want to open myself up to new traffic if they're also on a similar to all users or similar to converters list. So just make sure that we're getting the most out of that campaign. Great. And I think that's it from the questions, guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for tuning in, and next week you have the 3rd episode of Pillars of Performance, which is around attribution, which is sometimes a theme that a lot of marketers will scratch their heads on, but definitely one that is very, very important.
Great, and that is on the 26th at 11 a.m. And again, we'll be sending out a new email with a new link for next week's episode. If you know somebody who'd like to tune in, make sure you share it around, and we'll get as many people on as possible. But again, guys, thanks very much and have a good week. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.